Nigeria's labor market is saturated with millions of job seekers, but very few jobs. Recent data from the NBS, that's the National Bureau of Statistics, shows that the country's employment, or rather unemployment rate, currently stands at 33.3%, and that the country only captures 49% of its human capital potential. Research has shown that Nigeria's digital economy holds the potential to create jobs and reduce the rate of unemployment. However, to fully harness the sector's potential, there is a need for the country to invest in digital and soft skills. Back to the statistics. According to the NBS, the ICT sector recorded the highest growth rate in the fourth quarter of 2020, a growth that helped move Nigeria out of recession. So it came as no surprise that in March this year, the NITDA Director General Kashifu Unuwa presented a proposal for the realignment of the NIDA Act 2007 with the principles of the Nigeria Digital Economy Policy Strategy and Fourth Industrial Revolution to the National Assembly. He explained that an urgent review of the laws was imperative in keeping abreast of the accelerating changes within the worldwide IT-driven ecosystem and to properly position Nigeria as Africa's leading digital economy and a major player on the global scene. A possible version of the bill was leaked online and it created a storm of controversy. We witnessed how the operations of motorcycle hailing companies in Lagos were halted indefinitely in early 2020, forcing them to switch business models to survive. In March of this year, the CBN barred people from trading cryptocurrency through banks, and crypto startups haven't been the same, despite using peer-to-peer methods. And more recently, the Twitter ban has affected small businesses in general, as well as how tech startups communicate with customers. So there are examples of why Nigeria's tech community may be apprehensive about possible changes to the NITDA Act. Today, we're looking at amending Nigeria's tech sector laws. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Now joining me on the show today is Boluwatife Sanwo. She's an analyst with TechCabal Insights, and we'll be getting into the NITDA Act, the proposed act, as well as how the country can do better. Boluwatife, welcome to Business Edge, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So let's start with the bill in a way, even though that this is a leaked version and we're not exactly sure if this is actually the version that will go ahead of the National Assembly. But even before that, we've seen a boom in Nigeria's technology sector in the recent years. We've seen more startups come in, offering more services, trying to change the game as it would be. And as they've boomed, we've also seen the spotlight, and some would even say the hammer, come down on this sector as well. Before we look at how possibly NITDA can be reformed and realigned, as according to the Director General, what's the presence of NITDA and the influence that the agency has had over the years? Has it really been there? Has it been influential? Has it been something that really the tech industry in Nigeria has felt its power and its presence?
Thank you. So I think that, definitely NITDA is a key regulator in the sector, right? So one notable achievement that NITDA has done is the introduction of the NDPR in 2019, which is basically to ensure that data is well protected and well handled. And I also know that they're working on a few capacity building projects. However, I do think that there's more that NITDA could do to ensure that technology startups in the industry thrive, right? And that's why I'm also excited that they're working with us on the Nigeria Startup Bill.
Okay, we'll talk about the bill as well, because some feel like the two of them, the realignment of NITDA and the bill, are a bit at crosshairs, as it may be. So in March of this year, we heard NITDA's Director General Kashifu Unuwa presented a proposal for the alignment of the Act of 2007. Now, you've talked about some capacity building, but in terms of support, funding, training, infrastructure development, even exposure for many government agencies the past few years, has NITDA sat down with those in Nigeria's tech space to also talk about what they need? Is there conversations ongoing as it is now, or were even conversations ongoing before now?
Yes, so I believe that government agencies have been quite supportive in the past, and even as we speak, the BOI, that's the Bank of Industry, for instance, has been very supportive of the creative sector, and this includes organizations in the tech sector. However, we need more of this support from government agencies. And more importantly, we need supportive regulations and policies so that startups are able to thrive, startups are able to operate successfully without the fear of being shut down, for instance. So, yes.
All right, let's talk about how much money we're talking about. So Nigerian tech startups raised $219 million in Q1 of 2021, an amount that almost triples the combined figures of Q1 in 2018, Q1 2019, and Q1 2020. The amount raised is also higher than the figures for 2020 overall. The sector has been acknowledged as helping push Nigeria out of recession in Q4 2020. It has also seen some, not so much, I'm trying to get to it, a lot less government involvement over the years, but that seems set to change now. And many in the sector are expressing anxiety over having government, Nigeria's government in particular, more involved, having more regulatory oversight as well. And it looks like the government's approach is about to change. Do you believe that there are some places of concern, that there is areas where these people have valid concerns concerning how Nigeria's government might become involved in the tech industry?
Yes, I believe that there are definitely concerns, and I also think that these companies have a right to be concerned. I mean, anyone in their shoes would be concerned, right? But then another thing I believe is that anxiety stems from a lack of clarity. So really, when you think about it, these startups or these companies are not necessarily as concerned about the government being involved as they are about, just wanting to be sure what the involvement entails or what the involvement is. Because I think that every innovator recognizes the role of regulation, forgive me. Every innovator recognizes the role of regulation in, enabling the tech industry, whether in Nigeria or across the world. So they just want to know if the regulation that's going to be put forward is going to help them, prosper in the industry and not stifle their growth. So, yeah.
So what role do you think government should have? We spoke to a startup founder last week, I believe it was, and he said that you can't regulate creativity. And you're saying that there is a role for regulation in the sector, a sector that is so driven by creativity, by finding solutions, by providing solutions to some of the issues that we have. So what role do you think government should play?
I think that government should, so across the world generally, right? It's not just Nigeria. I believe that the role of government where technology is concerned is to enable it, to nurture it, and to positively motivate it. I mean, this can happen through, conversations. We need a lot of conversations for that to happen, for instance. But, like I said, this is even across the world. So it's not even a Nigeria thing. Nigeria is not an exception to that. So we need more enabling conversations, open conversations, channels for people to communicate their fears and displeasures and to just talk about things generally. So yes, that's what I think.
All right, so Boluwatife, we're going to take a break now and then we'll get into the bill. What we have seen that has leaked online and possibly has raised some concerns, a lot of licenses, penalties and fees being involved, as well as a trust fund that's causing some controversy as well. And we'll get into that conversation when we come back. Nigeria's tech sector is setting off a boom. Some big unicorns and zebras as well involved in this conversation. An ability to open up the sector to millions and millions of dollars in revenue, translating to billions of naira, and also, of course, creating millions of jobs here in the country. But regulation, a necessity, but how will it be done? The conversation continues right after this. There are those who believe that you cannot regulate creativity when it comes to the tech industry, but many governments around the world are trying to do just that, and Nigeria is no different. There are seemingly some interesting amendments that are coming from the NIDDA Act 2007, and we'll get into that conversation now with our guest, Boluwatife Sanwo, who's an analyst with TechCabal Insights. Now, Boluwatife, talking about government's role, what recently appeared to be possible amendments, and I keep having to stress that because no one as of yet has claimed that those are the amendments for the bill, but they were leaked. Something was leaked online and has generated a lot of conversation. When you look at what you've seen online and the direction that the amendments are heading, do you think that this is going in the right direction for the industry?
Sir, could you repeat your question?
Given what we've seen online, do you think that the possible, not proposed, but the possible amendments we've seen online are going in the right direction as it concerns Nigeria's tech industry? Hello, Boluwatife. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. I think I'm just having a little internet disruption, but I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So do you think the possible amendments we've seen online are heading in the right direction concerning the industry?
You forgive me if I can't really speak so much to the bill because, I mean, as you've said, or as a lot of people know, it's a leaked bill, right? But I have actually heard that some of the content is alarming. But I'm also aware that, there are conversations ongoing with the relevant stakeholders about the content of the bill. And we're just working to be sure that, it's at the end of the day, it's going to help the industry progress. And that's also, part of what we're doing with the NSB, collaborating with NIDA on that. So yeah, I can't really speak much to the details of the leaked bill, but conversations are ongoing about it. So that's that much I can say.
So let me go back to the introduction. And when I mentioned what happened with motorcycle hailing companies in Lagos, that was in early 2020, we have the CBN restating, because they said that this ban has been on for a while, but restating its ban of cryptocurrency activity through banks. We also have the Twitter ban. A lot of people would question whether or not Nigeria's government really understands the potential that the tech industry holds for the country. And they've seen a number of actions that have given them rise to question the direction that the government is taking. What do you think that direction is? Even if we're going to leave aside the possible amendments, when you see these three actions and some other ones surrounding it, what do you think the possible direction is? Do you think government fully understands what potential this sector holds?
So about that, I think that some of the licenses or fines that I've just seen or heard people worried about as the bill, for instance, that's the bill now. I think that they're just one side of the coin, right? So I believe that there are two sides to this coin. The first side is fines or licenses, and these are like basically to address. So I think that they're to address cases where there's a contravention of a law, right? And then there's also the other side, which is to actually create enabling laws. So right now, what people can really see is the first side, which is more restrictive. And what they're looking to see is, to see enabling laws that help them progress in the industry. So what we really need to achieve is to create a balance between these two sides. And even though we're on the way to creating that balance, we've not fully achieved it. But I think that if we keep at the important conversations like this, we'll definitely get there.
All right, so you mentioned the Nigeria startup bill that is also in the works. Now, this is a joint venture between Nigeria's tech startup ecosystem and the presidency. And they say on the website that this will harness the potential of our digital economy through co-created regulations. The bill will ensure that Nigeria's laws and regulations are friendly, clear, planned, and work for the tech ecosystem. But again, unfortunately, having to reference a bill that we have not been able to confirm, if we're looking at what could be possible amendments to the NIDA Act and then looking at the movement for the Nigeria Startup Bill, they seem headed in slightly different directions. And this is something we've seen a lot. Regulatory oversight. We've seen the CBN have a different position on cryptos from the SEC's position on cryptos. We've seen the CBN have a different position on a number of tech-influenced products opposed to what the SEC is doing. So you sort of have a contrast in where agencies or even actions are showing. What do you think this means for the sector? Because this becomes a regulatory issue that can change a startup's basic future just overnight.
So first of all, let me clarify, the two sides, right? NIDA and then the NSB, and just sort of see what the relationship between these two are. So the NIDA Act, I know that that's an amendment of the existing NIDA Act of 2007, right, which is already in play. And I know that it appears that it's to sort of ensure or clarify and consolidate the regulatory authority of NIDA in the information technology sector. But the NSB, on the other hand, is different, right? And that's because the purpose of the NSB is to put forward laws or to serve as a law that will sort of recognize the peculiarities and the needs of Nigerian startups. And also it's meant to set up or create a framework for regulatory certainty. And what will this do for startups? Number one, is going to help them operate successfully in the sector without fear or anything. And then number two is also going to serve as an incentive to them, to emerging startups, and even to investors that want to invest in them. So now, what's the relationship between the two of them? So I know that the NSB project team, that's the Nigeria Startup project team, is in conversations with NIDA. Actually, we've engaged the agency, and the agency is fully in support of it. Even the Honorable Minister, Dr. Issa Pantami, who is the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, he has thrown his full weight behind the bill. So we're just hoping that the extent of the amendments or NIDA's or the implementation of the amendments is going to cover some of the things that we've discussed under the Nigeria Startup Bill. And we're also, of course, hoping that the agency is going to continue to be progressive in its approach or in its activities. But just that's one thing I wanted to clarify is that we're working fully with the support of NIDA. We've engaged them. We're constantly in conversations with them. We held a consultation session last week or so, and Dr. Issa Pantami was in attendance. So this is not something that we're doing, just in isolation. We're working hand in hand with these agencies to ensure that there's cohesion across all sectors. So yes.
Okay, so cohesion is the way forward. And let's look at what some of the bigger ones have done. So recently we also saw Flutterwave, which is one of the notable tech startups that have started here on the continent, particularly here in Nigeria. They announced the appointment of a regulatory and government relations officer in July of this year. Not something many people have actually done. With how policy and regulatory oversight can impact the sector literally overnight, what kind of engagement or preemptive steps should Nigerian tech startups have with government? So you've talked about having these conversations as well. Is everybody called to the table, the big, the medium, and the small? Are these conversations involving everyone that could be influenced and affected?
So to answer your very last question, if there's a feeling that everyone is not called to the table, I think that startups themselves should also try to create open lines of communication between them and government stakeholders, right? So because the truth is that if there is no communication, then there's obviously going to be disparity between both sides, right? So creating open lines of communication, creating channels for them to deliberate constantly with government, and not after the laws have been put in place, but before they have been even discussed, right? So to sort of engage with government before these conversations even start to appear on social media or anything. And what this is going to help them achieve is that they're going to be more proactive with their steps, because they will know what the government is planning before it's done, instead of being reactive, which is some of what we've seen, in the past few years. So so I think that what is really needed now is to openly engage with regulators, and surprisingly, you see that regulators are actually willing to listen. So I think communication works.
We've seen the global economy undergoing a rapid digital transformation, and we see everybody trying to sort of basically get their hands on the pie or get their piece of the pie when it comes to the digital economy, taxing digital services as well. And Nigeria is said to be in the best position to reap the benefits for the country. The country's potential is evident in its size as the biggest digital market and the leading destination for investment on the continent. It's estimated that Nigeria's digital sector could add $88 billion and 3 million jobs to the economy by 2027. So this is a sector that definitely government is not going to leave alone and no one can ignore. What is the way forward to allow the creativity of the sector to really bloom and boom, as it would be, but also to ensure that government can protect people? Because the DG of the agency has mentioned data privacy, has mentioned a number of things. They're also doing that fund as well, where companies will be giving about either 0.05% of their profits or 1%, depending on what level you're on, to help develop the industry further. What is the way forward for this sector as it concerns Nigeria?
I believe the way forward for the tech sector is, number one, co-created laws, and of course communication. That's always going to be a thing for me, and collaboration, right? And this is actually what we're trying to achieve. That's a lot of what the NSB is targeting. So I believe that with these three in place, the tech sector we're definitely going to see a lot of this growth that you've mentioned, even in the numbers that you shared earlier, happen, right? So that's, like I said, that's what the NSB is targeting, to just sort of drive this growth. But we need to have laws that are co-created, and that collaboration is very important, right? You can't have the startups that you're creating laws for, not even be aware, and then it just sort of causes an imbalance, right, in communication. So I think that communication, collaboration, and co-created laws are very important to take the tech sector forward and achieve its potential.
All right, Boluwatife Sanwo, we'll leave it at that. We know there is a timeline for the Nigeria startup bill, so that's also going to be a separate conversation on its own, given how much input that the sector has had as well. So we look forward to having you back. Boluwatife Sanwo, an analyst with TechCabal Insights. Thank you so much for joining me on Business Edge.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, so we have to emphasize that the version online is leaked. No one has yet claimed, I guess we'd say, authority over it, but it has generated conversation and it did need to be addressed. What's going to happen with Nigeria's tech industry? Many people aren't sure. Many people have concerns, but what we know are the numbers. $88 billion could be added to the economy, as well as 3 million jobs by 2027 if Nigeria can harness the potential of this sector. I hope we can. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's NC4 to watch. Stay with us. And NC4 to watch kicks off in the eastern part of the continent. Kenya's most recent weekly Mombasa tea auction offered 8.4 million kilograms of tea for sale. The tea auction recorded a slight increase in prices, with a kilogram selling at an average price of $2.04 compared to $1.96 during the previous sale held earlier in August. We stay in Kenya as we go to number 2. The Kenya Airports Authority has announced plans for Kisumu International Airport to get a 157 million Kenyan shilling facelift in preparation for the 9th edition of the Afri-Cities Summit, scheduled to take place in April 2022. The projects will enable the airport to accommodate 1 million passengers annually, up from the current 500,000. The United Arab Emirates flag carrier Emirates has further extended suspension of its flight to Nigeria till September the 5th, feeling uncertainty on resumption of travel between the two countries. The extension comes despite the decision by the UAE to open its borders to welcome fully vaccinated tourists from other countries. And finally, an increasing share of South Africans' household income is being spent on electricity. Municipal tariffs are gobbling up an increasing portion of household income. According to data from the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association, its council bill represented 14.05% of tenants' household expenses in 2009 and 2010. Now it is almost 24%. The biggest increase, 224% over this period, was in electricity tariffs, while salaries increased by 91% and rent by 80%. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget that you can follow us on all of our social media platforms, download our mobile app on the App Store and Play Store, and of course follow us and subscribe on YouTube so you can check out any of the business, economic, and financial conversations you may have missed coming out of the continent. We are live on Star Times 274, and I'll see you 11 a.m. West African time as we take on another business conversation right here on the continent. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun.